between now and any future independence event in terms of building political institutions, or social institutions, or infrastructure in terms of physical infrastructure and organisational infrastructure, so that using those new powers to do that, so that the final step is a smaller one when we eventually get there. I'm going to run through some key sectors now just to kind of highlight some of this, and I've picked 10. I'm going to kind of whiz through them to give you a sense of the breadth of what we've got here in terms of Scotland's economy. The first one was oil and gas. How much oil and gas is left? Well, 50 years, 100 years, who knows, but it's certainly a lot more than some of the numbers that are floated about during the referendum. But you've got to remember, it's not just oil and gas, the extraction, there's other parts to that. The oil and gas services is a big and growing part of that sector, as is the equipment that comes in the back of that, because a lot of the oil companies' support services, it's now all about people that have worked in the industry for a long number of years, have got very high levels of skills, plus the technology that's been developed in the deep water drilling. And you get on a flight from Aberdeen, there's Scottish guys flying all over the world to support oil sectors in whatever corner of the globe, and that's all revenue coming back to Scotland. Food and drink, of course, is huge. Whisky and premium foods, and well positioned as premium brands. If you think about Scottish food exports, they're all kind of premium brands. Salmon, be it other fisheries, be it beef, be it whatever, which is nice because you don't have a big industry, but you do command a premium price for it, which is important. Renewables is potentially huge. Because of the geography we've got, there's 25% of the potential wave power in Europe is in Scotland. If you look at the map, the Atlantic Ocean and the North Sea empty in and out of each other twice a day, regular as clockwork, and that's a huge amount of potential energy. So we're in a position where we can exploit that. And that leads on to a lot of manufacturing sectors on the back of that if we do that properly. I mean, Denmark's a country that's invested in that sector for the long term. Another country, 5 million people with a lot less natural resources than us, they've recognised that as a sector and pumped a lot of investment into that. That's something that we should be doing as well. Marine's another one. We talk about Scottish shipbuilding, and we talked during the referendum about Scottish military shipyards could close if there was a yes vote and all these other scare stories, forgetting the fact that the number of people employed in shipbuilding in Scotland under the Union went from 35,000 to just a few thousand. So the Union was so good it would have protected those shipbuilding jobs. And Norway's an interesting example. They built close to 100 ships in Norway last year, across 30 odd shipyards. And the average wage in Norway is more than twice what it is in Scotland, and they export those ships. So it just shows you what you can do with a much higher cost base than us if you focus on the right markets in the right sectors and the right kind of ships and doing the right kind of outfitting for them. The Norwegians have built up a nice wee business there just by doing things that make sense. There's no reason why we couldn't do that. Life sciences, another area. I was actually, by coincidence, out in Rosslyn, which is Edinburgh University Vet School, and they've got a kind of science park there that they're developing, which is where they did Dolly the sheep and all this kind of stuff. And that's a sector that's that whole life sciences, research and development, and all the healthcare stuff that comes off the back of it is a sector that's growing in Scotland, where we're quite well placed from an academic point of view and to build on top of that. Tourism, huge. The whole Brand Scotland thing is world renowned to anyone in the world. People know about Scotland and what it stands for. And from a tourism point of view, it's a huge advantage compared to most countries. Professional services is one of the areas I've been involved in. Exporting expertise, talked about that in the oil and gas sector, across a whole range of sectors. There's people in Scotland with decades of expertise that we export, which is a very big earner for us. Financial services, people talk about the crash, but financial services, well-managed asset management, which is looking after people's money, investing it wisely, and knowing how to do that, is something that Scotland's been very strong in and continues to be strong in. And that part of the financial services market, rather than the let's invest in stuff that doesn't really exist part of it, which kind of crashed, but the asset management part of it is fairly strong. Manufacturing we talked about, but that's all about recovering from the downturn we've had and reindustrialising. And that's something that takes time, but it's something that can absolutely be done. And I talk about Finland, where I lived and worked for a year. Got a percentage of manufacturing in the economy twice what we have, a country of 5 million people. Very little natural resource apart from some forestry, no fisheries like we've got, no oil and gas like we've got, and they've had some horrendous times over the past few decades. Our biggest market was the Soviet Union, which obviously collapsed in the early 90s. And what they did was they said, well, okay, what's the upcoming sectors? Telecoms in the early 90s, that looks like a good sector. Let's go and build a world-beating telecoms company from scratch. And they went and did it with Nokia. So it just shows you what you can do if you will focus on stuff. And there's a huge amount of industry in Finland, which is spread right across the country from north to south, and all kinds of small towns. You stumble across factories employing 300 or 400 people building stuff, which is just incredible. And a lot of that was off the back of the supply chain they built to support Nokia and the telecom sector. And not forgetting Scottish universities, which of course are right up there amongst the best in the world. So if you run through it, there's an awful lot of economic strengths we've got. I talk about connectivity, and this kind of puts some numbers around about the potential and the difference between having an economy that's focused on being an independent country of 5 million people, where you've got people want to come and do business with you because you've got head offices there and you've got government business going on, government to business stuff going on, and also a focus on connectivity that isn't completely centred around how many runways we should have at Heathrow, and spreading that air traffic about a bit. Denmark, Norway, Scotland, all about 5 million people, and the main airports in Copenhagen and Oslo put through significantly more traffic than Edinburgh. You add Glasgow into the picture, it's still significantly more traffic than the combined traffic there. So the potential for growth, in just one example, connectivity is huge if we're managing that properly. From a tax point of view, from an investment point of view, and from a brand Scotland, if you like, point of view. So, Scottish Government brought a strategy for growth, as it happened just in the last few days, which focuses on export growth, which is key for a country of 5 million people, but we're well placed to do that. Encouraging innovation, again, if you're a relatively high-wage economy compared to the Asian economies, for example, you need to position yourself in a place where you're working on high-value add, high-wage, high-technology sectors, and that's all about innovation and investment, which is very, very important, which is what the Scandinavians have done very successfully. Investment driven, we talked about, and also understanding social inclusion is a big, big part of that. Using economic powers to target support, moving away from the blanket 3% corporation tax to something that's more about, okay, what sectors have got the potential for export growth, let's target tax breaks there, what sectors are investing money, in other ways, let's target some support there, which is much more focused and quite coherent, and as I said, underpinned by a strong academic sector. So, I'm going to talk about, just to finish up, we're all right for time, are we? Yeah. My wee story from Norway. Apologies if you've heard this before, and apologies if I can't remember it all, because it's 6 months since I've told it. It's a wee story about the Prime Minister of Norway that goes for a walk along the fjord one day, as you do, and he stumbles across the magic lamp, and he picks up and gives it a rub, and the genie pops out, and the genie says to him, I'll give you some wishes to make Norway a better country. And the Prime Minister says, well, I can't really think of anything, because we're just about the richest country in the world. They measure these things and tell us we're one of the happiest countries in the world. We've not got much poverty to speak of, everybody's got a decent enough job, and they've got plenty of leisure time and money to enjoy it, so it's kind of hard to think of something that would make us a better place. And he says, well, you need to think of something. And the Prime Minister thinks for a minute and says, okay, I can think of a few things. He says, okay, on you go. He says, well, we've got a fairly strong economy in Norway, but it's very narrow. We've got our oil and gas, we've got some fisheries, but that's pretty much it. It'd be good if we had some other sectors that we could rely on to give us some revenue now and into the future. For example, we've got this national drink called Aquavit that we love it, but nobody else has ever heard of it. It'd be great if that was a world-renowned brand and people from Singapore to Chicago would pay stupid money to take this stuff off our hands, and we couldn't make enough of this stuff, and we were the only people that were allowed to make it. That would be a nice wee earner we could rely on in the future. He says, yeah, we can do that for you. He says, we've got a problem with the language, we speak Norwegian, and nobody else in the world speaks Norwegian. It'd be great if Norwegian was the world business language. make life a lot easier for us. Just got on a plane from here to Japan or Brazil and got off the plane and start talking Norwegian and doing business with people. That'd be nice and easy. We're going holiday to wherever and just speak Norwegian and everybody would understand. That'd be nice. Yeah, we can do that for you. He said we've got a beautiful country here in Norway, but it's difficult to get around. Infrastructure's expensive, and it's a big country, a lot of mountains. The weather's horrible. In the winter it's -35 for month after month. The snow's up to here. The snow plows out in the morning just to get to work. It'd be great with the same natural resources, the same population in a country a quarter the size and a nice temperate climate all the year round, so we didn't have to worry about the snowplows digging us out every morning. He said, yeah, we can do that for you as well. He said, we've got a problem getting to our main markets. To export stuff, we've got to go through 2 other countries to get to our main markets in Europe. It'd be great if we had a landmass of maybe 60 million people just bolted on our southern border there that we could export to. And they'd all speak Norwegian, of course, and have a big world capital city there that was a real hub for investment in the economy, and we could trade with them. We wouldn't want to be ruled by them, you understand. We just want to be friendly neighbours to do business with. That would make life a wee bit easier for us. It'd be great if we had 4 of the top 200 universities in the world in Norway. That'd help. It'd be great with an industrial heritage going back 200 years, and when our engineers and businessmen went to talk to people, they treated us with respect because of the things we'd invented over the decades and the centuries. And it'd be great if we had a stronger brand in Norway, so that when we talked to people, they knew who we were and where we were coming from. If our national Norwegian poet, for example, was celebrated every year in Glasgow and Washington, and our national dress was instantly recognised, that'd make our brand a bit stronger, help our tourism, help with our profile, and on and on and on and on and on. And the whole point is, during the referendum, we used to get laughed at by the No campaign, because we would talk about one day Scotland could be as rich as Norway. And you've got to remember, in the 1970s, Norway was poorer than Scotland, and they played a couple of cards and played them very well, and they are where they are. And we should be looking at Norway as being a kind of starting point, not an aspiration, because we've got the potential to do a lot better even than they had. And during my world tour of Scotland, I told that story a couple of times, and in the Q&A, somebody put a hand up and said, I'm from Norway. And I thought, oh my God, they're going to call me out. And on both occasions, they said, no, you're absolutely right. Norway was bankrupt in the 70s, but we've done well because of what we've had. And Scotland's very, very well placed to do better than that. And just the last point, this is from an independent newspaper called The Independent. We're not a great fan of independence, as we know. And this was a journalist who wrote this early part of last year. And what he did was he looked at some data and did some analysis on what made countries successful around the world from an empirical point of view. And he reckoned there were 3 factors that made countries successful. Countries of 5 million people, give or take, were successful because they're coherent, they're more responsive to the population. It's easier to get hold of the politicians. It's the connections between politicians and business and the academic sector are closer and tighter, and those kinds of economies are more able to take advantage of opportunities and better able to deal with downturns. And you look at countries like that, Finland we've talked about, Sweden we've talked about, Denmark, Austria, countries like that right at the top of the European league table. All of our countries have a strong financial sector. And there's been a financial crash for sure, but at the end of the day, having a strong financial sector is better to have it than not to have it. And the countries that have got those kind of sectors have managed to downturn better than most. For example, Switzerland's done all right. Singapore's doing a lot better than most of its neighbours with their strong financial sectors. Again, countries of about 5 million people. All have got natural resources. For example, Norway, with its natural resources and its 5 million people. So those 3 factors, the size, natural resources and your strong financial sector. And a lot of countries that are very successful have got 2 of the 3. And again, I think there's only one country in the world that's got all 3, and that's Scotland. On that basis, I reckon there was a huge potential there to do very, very well. So I'm going to leave you there, and I think we've got time for Q&A. I hope that wasn't too wide-ranging and too diverse, and hopefully it's